Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. And as you can see, I am back in my own domain, back in the garage. I was very fortunate this afternoon. The proceedings at the court on the last day of the election petition trial ended a lot sooner than I anticipated, which I'll go through the details of it in a moment. And I decided to head down the train station and had a word with the staff there. And I managed to swap my ticket to an earlier train than I'd originally planned. And I've been home probably nearly an hour now. And I managed to get all the way down to London and all the way home without any trouble whatsoever, and had my lovely wife waiting for me to collect me when I got back. So everything went as planned. It's been a long few days. I hope the coverage that I've brought you has kept you informed, and those that wanted to make it and couldn't, I hope that's kept you informed as well. And as I said, today is the last day. There is a large group of them still in Chester who are going to be going home either tomorrow or later today, even though it is later today, but you get what I mean. What I wanted to do was go through what actually occurred in the court today, so you know what happened, and then summarize it all with a little video at the end. All right, so here we go. This has been an absolute godsend to me the last few days, this orange notebook where I've sat at the back scribbling away, trying to remember as much as possible. Those of you that were there would have seen me. And the last couple of days I actually had headphones on as well, which made it easier to hear everything that was going on. So when we arrived at the court, it started slightly later today, about 11 o'clock, because all we literally had was Graham's closing arguments to go through. Now, one of the first things that we looked at when we got there was a little bit of video footage on the screen, again, looking at precisely what happened with the election count. The way in which they were handling the papers on either side, to again remind everybody of the point that, you know, Graham was getting at. Now, as part of his closing arguments, and it's very important, Graham pointed out two specific triggers which started the ball rolling, so to speak. And one of those triggers was the fact that he got 50 votes in 2016 and exactly 50 votes this time round. Not 49, not 48, not 47, 50 votes each time. And it's statistically very, very, very unlikely, as testified by a statistical expert on day 2, I believe. The other thing as well is the 6-vote margin that Sarah Pochin won by. You know, if this was something like, if she had a 20,000 majority, say, picking a number out of fresh air, then this election petition wouldn't have any legs. But the fact we're talking 50 votes and Sarah Pochin only won by 6, this is one of the things that to consider. And one of the other issues is as well that's come out. One of the responsibilities of a returning officer is the absolute integrity of the election, and in the public interest, he could have called for a full recount without having to go through all of these strikeouts, legal proceedings, election petition. He could have done that. So why not? Very important. And the other side appeared to have ignored, you know, all of this. It was pointed out that Graham stood in an election in Southend, and they queried why he didn't raise an election petition then, because of the result. And there was a couple of factors in play. It was around the time of lockdown. Also, the English Constitution Party was a new party, pretty much their first election. And, you know, circumstances denoted that, you know, they were what you would call a paper candidate rather than really going full-blooded for it. The election in 2016 was a high-profile election because it was the election where Sadiq Khan removed himself from Parliament to enable him to stand as the Mayor of London. this election that we have at the moment, you know, what we're talking about was high profile as well, because it was another Reform MP to go into the House of Commons. And obviously, as we saw from video footage as well, Nigel Farage was very much involved. Graham wanted to point out that he's not a politician. He is a constitutionalist. And as a constitutionalist, he believes, as I do, in you know, the law. The law is God's law. God is the word of law. You know, it works both ways. And that is all he is interested in, the Constitution and the word of law. He then talked about the representation of people, because when you look at the representation of people, that is what a politician is supposed to do. And to that end, there are no whips within the English Constitution Party. For having a whip is actually unconstitutional when you look at the situation. That was pointed out. And we refer to Halsbury's Laws of England, and there are several volumes of Halsbury's Laws. Most of them are about that thick. And you know, if you look at any of Graham's podcasts or any shows he does, they're all behind him on the shelf. And the one he refers to particularly is all to do with elections, where it talks about freedom of elections and the fact that the penalties can be very severe if they're interfered with, freedom of elections. And this goes all the way back to at least the first statute of Westminster, and it's still active. And, you know, any interference in elections is in breach of the Bill of Rights and also the European Convention of Human Rights as well, one being ceded by the other. Also, it's important to point out, and if you remember, I've pointed this out before, if there is any interference with elections or there is any problem with elections, then what you have a case of is that it undermines Parliament, because the sovereignty flows from the people to Parliament. We lend it to them. And if there's a problem with one, how can you have a properly functioning Parliament? Now, it was suggested, and as was said by the witness yesterday in the second day, that there is a procedure to deal with any complaints. So why didn't Graham go down that route if he felt there might have been a problem at the time? Pointless. The ultimate complaint, or the ultimate source of grievance in this case, is an election petition, which is why he brought it to the court. There was mention of Southmeath, which was another election in the past, and also the fact that there has been historic problems with elections going all the way back to 1275, and all this tends to do is erode confidence in the election process. And, you know, diverting from that, this is why we end up with a situation where we get very low turnouts in elections, because no one wants to know. No one wants to know anymore, and that's how this system goes on. Now, one thing that Graham pointed out is where he came to the defence of George Galloway. George Galloway, you know, had his election. I'm not sure, to be honest, which one Graham's referring to, but he had his election at the time stolen from him. Graham, while not agreeing with George's politics whatsoever, made the point of that, said that he came to George's defence and wrote a statement for him. But George didn't follow it up with an election petition, because these things are designed to purely bankrupt you, you know, and that's why they're very few and far between at this level. So we must give Graham credence for the courage that he's shown in bringing this to the fore. Now, the judge at this stage, while Graham was talking, interrupted Graham and pointed him to the fact that what they want is to be guided on his points of evidence, and particularly what relief is he seeking. You know, if a full independent recount is what he saw, and they prove the other side that a full independent recount is what happened, then the remedy is sought. But we're not convinced, and we don't believe at all that this was the case. Graham made a point of saying that if there is a recount, it must be somewhere else away from Chester. I agree with that wholeheartedly, because I reckon there'd be a situation, personally, this is my opinion, he'd get 50 votes. So it has to be away from Chester. He said he has trust in the High Court judges, because they would then become counting agents in such a feat. Graham is adamant that he saw more votes than were actually declared for him. Again, it's the piles of 50 votes. But as we found out yesterday, the witness, the deputy returning officer, actually turned around and said, well, we don't actually stock them in piles of 50. And I'm quite prepared on record to say now, well, what you've done is won his case for him, because at the end of the day, if you're disagreeing with what Graham saw, whether it's your version or Graham's version, he's still got more than 50 votes. It's wrong. So, Graham, there was Valerie, who I met over the last couple of days. She saw the same thing as Graham. Other witnesses did too. There was more than 50 votes. It was pointed out by Graham that the witness, at the end of the day, she's got a job to do. She is trained really to protect her system, to protect the system, and that's what she was there to do. That's what it appeared to be. There was some talk about the meaning of what you would call chaos at the election. There was some talk about that, whether it be organised chaos or otherwise. It's very much the chaotic atmosphere and the chaotic environment involved in what's going on. The judge had a question about where did Graham see the 50 votes, the more than 50 votes that he got, where and at what point. And Graham pointed towards a particular counting station. And he said that the reality of the situation is different to the testimony that was given by the witness the day before. If the count is erroneous, if it's wrong and it's proven to be wrong and there has to be a recount, then, the judge identified that it's a breach of Graham's rights. If it turns out that the count was legitimate, then no rights have been breached at all. They spoke a little bit about, the basis of the complaint, and also spoke about the police interference, where they did quite a heavy query about what Graham was up to, where he was going to go and what he was going to do, and no one else was asked these questions. You can't do that in an election. And also the post office, their actions, because at the end of the day, and I saw video footage firsthand, the election videos and the people around, there was more than 50. And if you look at the exposure various YouTubers have tried to give Graham, I mean, you take me with 157,000 subscribers and I get thousands of views on most videos I do. There's Sean Atwood, who's got, I think it's a couple of million subscribers, who even lives locally to that area. It's either Sean or Mark Atwood that lives locally, one of them. But, and also, the size of the membership of the English Constitution Party, some of which live locally, who I had the pleasure of meeting while I was up there over the last 3 days. It just doesn't make any sense. With the videos, again, it's obvious that there was what you call telecounting going on. I mean, if you look at the corner of this book here, I can flick it, and it's my opinion from what I saw sitting at the back. That's what happened. Whatever happens, it came about. Whatever happens, whatever whatever way the decision goes, whether it be in Graham's favour or not, it's obvious that something needs addressing for future elections. And, you know, that's the whole idea, that that the election petition was brought, to bring this to the fore in the public interest, to identify that potentially there was a problem. Now, the judge, which I thought was very, very good, one of the judges, in fact, they both agreed, said that they could see how passionate and genuine Graham was in his belief that this needed to be done, why he did what he did, and the fact that, you know, there was no personal gain to be had here. One thing to understand very importantly is that Graham risks bankruptcy doing this. However, in the public interest, people need to be confident that they are able to vote in free and fair elections. If that doesn't happen, then all this talk of civil war and all the rest of it, at the end of the day, is a very real possibility. We have to have our democracy intact. Otherwise, what's the point in any of it? What is the point? They were very complimentary about Graham and the way he conducted himself, and throughout the 3 days. And, you know, again, Graham reiterated that it's not about him being an MP. He was never going to win. He was never going to get a £90,000 a year salary. It was about representing the people they represent, self-determination, the disabled, the needy, the you know, normal people. That's what it was about. It was nothing to do with power. It was nothing to do with electing. You know, that's not what it was about. And he brought this petition in the public interest, and you could see one of the judges nodding while he was saying it, nodding in agreement. So that was very good. What they've decided to do, which is what people are waiting to hear, there is no judgment at this stage. What they've delivered is what's called a reserved judgment, which means they will not make a judgment now. They will consider everything that has happened, everything that has taken place, and then they will make a judgment at a later date, which hopefully will not be too long. Now, from what I've seen, it could swing either way. It depends on what they consider the important aspects, what they consider the good evidence, bad evidence, and everything else. Mr. Straker, I made a screw up yesterday, actually. I named Mr. Straker throughout my whole update, and then at the end said that I wasn't going to name Mr. Straker. Bit of a boo-boo there. But anyway, Mr. Straker, the KC for the other side, rose to apologise for a couple of terms that he used. He called Graham lowly in one statement, and then called him incompetent in something else. And he clarified his remarks and said, you know, it was more the process, and he didn't, you know, have any ill feelings or anything like that, which was good, I thought, just to clarify that. And the judgment, and it will be a final judgment, which will be handed down. We're not going to reconvene. We don't all have to go to Chester again. It will be handed down, I think, remotely in hopefully the not too distant future, and we'll all find out ultimately what's going on. Now, before I left, Graham and Steve, who again has to be complimented on how much help he's given Graham over the last few days. I'm not going to mention the onesie with the hood. Absolutely horrendous. I'll probably get a slap to that next time I see him. Gave me this document, a 13-page document, and this is the closing submission, which you have to make at the end of a court case. I'm not going to read it out, but I think the important thing to read out is the closing submission speech. Graham's read this out on his channel before, so I know he won't mind me doing it here. But here we go. I want to read this because it didn't come out in court, and I think it's important it does. My lords, we are gathered in this court under no ordinary cause. This is not the quarrel of man against man, nor the settlement of some petty dispute of property or contract. It is the trial of principle, the defence of liberty, the vindication of that most undoubted right which our forefathers bled to secure, the freedom of election. For what is an election, if not the very heartbeat of a free nation? It is the moment when the humble man stands equal with the mighty, when the widow and the workman, the farmer and the scholar alike place their trust by a single mark in one who shall represent them. In that act lies no less than the sovereignty of the people. A.V. Dicey, that great expositor of our Constitution, declared that Parliament is sovereign only because the people lend their sovereignty to it. It is a loan, not a gift. It is given for a term, and at the end of that term, it must be returned. That truth was echoed by one of our own in recent memory, Tony Benn, a man of Parliament, but above all, a servant of the people. Power, he said, is lent to me, and at the end of Parliament, I must return it. And Her late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, in her gracious address to both houses, affirmed that the authority of her government derives solely from the people's will expressed in free elections. My lords, what nobler chorus could there be? Dicey, Benn, and our late sovereign, all proclaiming the same truth, that the fountain of sovereignty is not found in the palace, nor in this court, nor in the commons themselves, but in the people. And that foundation flows only when elections are free, fair, and beyond reproach. It is therefore a solemn charge placed upon the returning officer. Any hour when he takes command of an election, he becomes no longer a mere functionary, but a crown officer. Upon his shoulders rests the sacred duty of ensuring the people's will is neither thwarted nor tampered with. He's answerable personally, criminally, and in tort for every act of wrong committed in the poll, the count, and the return. Yet what have we seen? We've seen a returning officer cease to be the guardian of the ballot and become instead the appointer of the member. We have seen the will of the people displaced by the administrative fiat, and let the court understand when the returning officer appoints, the people are dispossessed. When the returning officer appoints, there is no freedom of election. And when there is no freedom of election, there is no sovereign parliament. In 2011, the people themselves were asked, should we have another form of vote? Should we depart from our accustomed ballot and adopt the alternative vote? And the people, in the clear light of referendum, said no. They chose their franchise, plain and uncorrupted. Yet what I and 3 other witnesses observed was not mere deviation, not some trifling irregularity. It was a crime against the foundation of our liberty, a trespass against our undoubted human right of free election. My lords, the freedom of election is no small matter. It's the root of the tree, the keystone of the arch, the sure foundation of every other right. Without it, our liberties are a house built on sand, our parliament a chamber of echoes, our constitution a parchment without life. And what then of rules and forms, of procedures and regulations? These, my lord, are but the handmaids of justice, not her mistress. Shall the forms of law be raised up to crush its spirit? Shall technicalities strangle the people's birthright? No prejudice is done by either party by hearing this cause, but the gravest prejudice, the gravest injustice would be done to the people of Runcorn and Helsby in England were this court to close its ears to the subversion of their will. And so, my lords, I submit this court has not merely the power, but the duty to act, to vindicate the ancient right of free election, to guard the sovereignty of Parliament by upholding the sovereignty of the people. To refuse would be to betray Dicey, Benn, and Her late Majesty, to betray the very principle on which our Parliament stands, to betray the people themselves. Let us name this wrong for what it is. It's not mistake. It's not accident. It's not mere irregularity. It is usurpation, the theft of the people's voice, the silencing of their will, the pollution of their franchise. And if this court permits such a usurpation to stand, then freedom itself is but a word, and Parliament but a hollow name. But if this court acts, if it strikes down this wrong, then it proclaims to the people of Runcorn and Helsby and England that here the ancient rights of free men are still guarded. Here the sovereignty of the people is still honoured. Here the Constitution still lives. My lords, I rest my case. Let justice be done, though the very heavens fall. Very, very powerful words. Unfortunately, those weren't read out as I believe they should have been in the court at the close of play today. That would have made a very powerful statement. And the best thing you can do is encourage everybody you know to engage with the process, because if you don't, then we really are at a crossroads. I saw some WhatsApp communication today, which I can't really repeat the contents of, but it's what people are starting to think, and we need to become engaged with the process. You need to think about England. You need to think about Scotland. You need to think about Wales. You need to think about Northern Ireland, and you need to think about the laws that govern your countries. And you need to think about reading, particularly if you're retired, for example, and you can, get the time to research what's going on. And you will see, as I've learned over the last many months now, that everything you were told, everything that's put in front of you in the mainstream media is not what's really going on. In summation, what I want to do is play a video of me and Graham outside the courts. Many of you may have seen this already, but I think it's good to include it as part of a live stream. So here we go. Right, I'm outside of the court with Graham Moore. Here we are. You can see it in the background. It is the end. This is the third day, the Wednesday. Graham gave his closing submissions this morning. A little bit of conversation with the judges as well. And it's all over. And what I want to do, I'm not going to tell you what's happened. I'll save that for another update video later and give you the full SP about what happened in the court. But for now, Graham will tell you how he's feeling, where we're going, and what's going on now.
Right, so the main and most important thing is what's known as a reserve judgment. So everyone listening and watching to this should understand, every time we've had a reserve judgment from the High Court, it's always come out in our favour. But remember, in this, it was the actual election petition. They're listening to evidence from the other side. There was one particular person who adopted someone else's statement, gave evidence on behalf of the returning officer. It wasn't her statement. She was just explaining what processes and procedures were. And there was a number of questions on that. My closing submissions basically told them the history of England, the history of election fraud in England. Believe it or not, it's been rife for hundreds of years. There's lots of different judgments on it, and void elections, etc. So the judges have stated it's a reserve judgment. They've asked for two orders. One order is a losing order, and one order is a successful order, and there's two sets of things that can happen. One of the things that can happen is if they find in our favour, for whatever reason it is, then they are looking at holding a full independent individual ballot recount at the Royal Courts of Justice. That was what was suggested yesterday. If it goes the other way, I get basically Sarah Pouchin is confirmed as a return. They send a notification to the Speaker of the House of Lords. And then some people may laugh at this. If you haven't noticed, you should notice. She gets a grey check as a member of Parliament on Twitter.
Hey.
Right? So she's probably more pleased about that. But she hasn't had that check mark because her candidacy or election has been under threat or scrutiny. The judges were in agreement with some of the things we've said. They definitely don't like the fact that I got 50 votes in, 2 in, and then 50 votes here. They can understand the trigger point. They also understood that it would have been a completely different situation if one of the candidates had won by 14,000 votes. The petition would never have been brought. There were 6 votes in it, and we saw more than 50 votes for us, but they declared 50 votes. Statistically, it is so unlikely that you can only trigger a petition over it. So even if we, so first of all, the judges both said, whichever way it goes, we believe your motives were positive. Your motives are not malicious, and they both said that. So your motives are for justice, right, and for our rights, and that we get free and fair elections. All I can say is there is a cost order that they're looking at, and again, I've got to write one for the other side, and they have to write one for me. Yesterday, I received notification from the appellant court that they had completely refused to pay any costs and asked me so the appeal courts asked what were my costs because they're paying it. They lost in the 3 highest judges, second highest judges in the country. Getting back to the cost with this, I have to make and put forward a cost order for me against them, and then if they win, I can't remember what the figure is. It's somewhere in the region of 50 or 60,000 pounds that I would have to pay. It'll either bankrupt me, or there is a certain type of application you can make, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's in the public interest. What the judges kept saying is this gentleman has got nothing to gain by this at all. He was never going to be made an MP, and he knew that. He wasn't going to get an MP salary. He certainly wasn't going to get their expenses. There was no positive outcome for them other than justice and free and fair elections, and to make sure that these elections are correct and as they should be. So there is a positive outcome with that. They can, I don't know whether they will, they can turn around and say you've lost your deposit, you've lost your application fees, but because it was in the public interest, we will not cane you for the costs. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, is the answer. So the other viable option is they just bankrupt me, which means I'll never stand in an election again as an MP, and it causes all sorts of problems financially for the rest of your life, basically. But they've all said in the court, you in effect, you have achieved what you set out to achieve, right? I just want to make sure everyone listening to this understands, right? If it goes well, either way, I don't get made bankrupt, and we do stand again for Make England Great Again as constitutionalists. I just want you to understand this. If any one of us gets exactly 50 votes, they want to be very careful, right? So they won't, I don't think they will ever do that again, right? So if we stood in elections, the ballots that they would not touch would be our... I'm still saying there is fraud in these elections. It is corrupt. There's certain aspects of the procedures that is corrupt. So that's it, really.
Wonderful. Cheers, Graham. I will come along with another update a bit later with all my notes in here and let you know more detail exactly what went on in there. Thank you, Graham. Everyone support Graham. Let's follow this to the end and beyond. And I think for now the best idea is all round is if we go down that boozer down there.
Listen, we're going for a beer, but I do want to thank Andy for coming up here. He's been an absolute rock to us doing this. He understands the importance of it, and most importantly, so does the audience on YouTube. Don't just stay on YouTube. Do me a favour, if you listen to this, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, make sure you share the video. But here's the biggie, right? Also, go and register on Rumble, which is a free speech platform, and build up Andy's channel on there. Because when YouTube finally goes pear-shaped, and it will, Rumble is a free speech platform. And don't forget to follow Andy on Twitter.
Absolutely. And follow Graham too on Twitter, English Exit.
English Exit.
And the full English on Rumble. Thank you very much, everybody. As he said, like, subscribe, share. We're going down the boozer, and I'll be back later. Toodaloo. Well, there you go, everybody. That was recorded earlier today outside the court. Now, what we're waiting for next is obviously the judgment. That will come straight to you. I will bring that to you. If there's any other bits of information that need to be advertised about this in the meantime, I will bring them to you. I will keep the finger on the pulse. I think, considering what's going on in this country, on our streets, and with our systems of authority in this country, which are becoming very, very damaging indeed, I think it's very important that we become very much involved in everything as much as we can. Anyway, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, share this on your socials, and I hope this has served as a decent amount of update for what's been going on over the last few days. I'll be back, I'm sure, tomorrow once I caught up with my airport stuff. You should see my email list. Dear, oh dear. And as always, I look forward to talking to you soon. Toodaloo.